A convenience store girl casually mentioned the word belief, and it ended up changing this 65-year-old man's entire life. That day, while buying milk at the convenience store, the clerk noticed he was holding a letter and couldn't help asking about it out of curiosity. The old man told her about his colleague Annie, who had cancer. But the girl said that treating cancer wasn't most importantly about taking medicine. It was about belief. Hearing this, he immediately decided to walk 1,000 kilometers, traversing the entire length of Britain from the southwest to the northeast, to see a female colleague he hadn't met in over 20 years. It turned out that this very morning, Jack had received a letter from someone he didn't recognize. Opening it, he discovered the sender was actually Annie, a female colleague he'd worked with years ago at the distillery. Thinking back on his 40 years at the distillery, Annie was the only colleague he'd been close to. He found it hard to believe for a moment. Annie had cancer and was now living in a hospice. This letter had been sent specifically to say goodbye. Jack's mind conjured up images of her face from years past. Back then, they'd not only worked together on business calls, but he'd often driven Annie home. Faced with a dying colleague, Jack prepared to write back but couldn't think of what to say. After hours of contemplation, he only managed to write a single brief line on the paper. "Dear Annie, thank you for your letter. I'm so sorry." He then said goodbye to his wife and prepared to drop the letter in a mailbox. Thinking of Annie's face in his memories and those heavy words in her letter, Jack increasingly felt his reply was as light and insubstantial as a feather. Soon he reached the first mailbox. So he told himself, why not walk to the post office and mail it in person? But when he quickly arrived at the post office, he didn't have the courage to go inside. Jack walked into the convenience store across from the post office, wanting to buy a bottle of milk to relax before mailing it. And that's when the opening scene happened. After leaving the gas station, Jack called the hospice. He had the staff tell Annie that he was coming to save her. She had to stay alive and wait for him to arrive. After hanging up on the envelope he'd originally intended to mail to Annie, he solemnly wrote 2 words, "Wait for me." At that moment, he not only had little cash on him, but had also left his phone at home. He was even wearing leather shoes completely unsuitable for long-distance walking. Yet he resolutely began his journey. However, he was after all an elderly man who had barely walked anywhere in his life. Just getting out of his own town had exhausted all his strength. He understood there was no turning back now. So, at a public phone booth, he called his wife, who was anxiously waiting at home. "Stop being ridiculous and come home. This is something I have to do." Hearing that her husband was doing something so crazy for another woman, his wife angrily hung up. But remembering those buried memories and thinking of her husband's frail body, she quickly picked up the phone again. But by then, Jack had already walked out of the phone booth with a sense of lonely dejection. After resting at an inn for the night, Jack continued his journey the next day. Light rain began to fall. In the mud and cold, he only managed to walk 14 kilometers before having to stop and examine the scrapes covering his ankles. And right at that moment, a passing little girl blurted out, "You stink!" This finally made Jack stop rushing and instead sparked an even bolder idea in his mind.